my presentation is Kundalini through the lens of nature and the environment. She also introduced me some of the hats that I wear. Probably, obviously, the Emerging Science Foundation, newly appointed to their board in the last year or so. So very excited with the progress we're making there. I think it's really important for institutes to be open to public inquiry. Much of what we're speaking about today has actually been quite taboo in Western institutions and universities, and so it is important that we have these opportunities for thesis and for research to be conducted. In the big box here you can see the Energy Medicine Exchange, and that's one of my public portals, so if you want to follow up with me, I would encourage you to find the Energy Medicine Exchange on Facebook. But as I said, we're speaking about the environment, and as above, so below. The biofield that is my specific subject has been of great fascination because it's present in so many cultures, but real inquiry and investigation has had to wait for a number of different revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, the Technology Revolution, and now the high-tech revolution, which has allowed us to develop sensitive enough equipment to measure these things. Global weather, atmospheric weather has a great number of different devices like Dopplers and X-rays and different infrared technologies based on satellites and so forth, telescopes in space for advising us on our global and national weathers. But there hasn't been a push to develop technologies for measuring the human biofield, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's been held up. But this is what we're measuring, and it is quite interesting because it's been taboo from scientific endeavor. We've been left rather absent to understanding the fourth state of matter, because of course what I'm speaking to is bioplasma, in this case emerging from the fingertip, but we're very well versed in the solid, liquid and gaseous states, but plasma, again, certainly many universities now are looking at plasma technology, and you can buy a plasma welding device which reveals incredible capabilities. So it's definitely the age of plasma, we could say. But we've understood for thousands of years in our environment there are sources of this emanations, plasma, and we like to be associated with them, let's say. The journey of Adam and Eve into their conscious development is a Christian tale of Kundalini in a way, but it's not surprising that intelligent beings were nourishing themselves on sources of this life force and light that we see so clearly illuminated in a Kilian image with an apple. And my interest has been very much, what is possible, what are we able to do, what are we able to image, what are we able to make visible, which perhaps our education, looking at the blackboard, looking at the pen, looking at the blackboard, looking at the pen, we've evolved to be careful of pavements and door handles, and perhaps our sight has altered as we've evolved, and few of us in the community are spoken of as clairvoyants, clear seers, who can see this bioplasma. And it's actually very easy to see it if you go out in the early evening and look at the once the sun has set, look at the space around trees, for example, in the park. You'll definitely see the white glow of which I'm speaking. And as I said, in recent research, we've been able to really explore what is the significance of what I propose is the missing link for us to understand and fully integrate with nature. So you can reference biophotonic research and biophotonic emissions. I noticed Stuart mentioned academia. I think that's academia.edu, and that is a great source along with researchgate.net for research in all of these different fields. Because obviously there are a lot of papers that that need to be shared freely with the general public and wider public, and that's the kind of platform that these papers are available. But I've been fascinated with the casters predicting the storm. Is it possible for us to prepone the diagnostic process and identify patterns of disease before they become physical? That's certainly my area and arena of interest. But to address a wider subject of the environment, but from our perspective, we obviously have some very key pioneering discoveries that perhaps have been used by man for eons. This black and white photo speaks to probably, and same with those braces, the 50s, when probably quite a lot of men and women were traveling around various countries, employed within agriculture to identify sources of water. And I'm sure many of you would be surprised that this is still an absolutely huge industry, because it is the most efficient way to identify sources of water. And again, for your reference in my short presentation, I would certainly encourage you to look into dowsing. And there are some modern equivalents. This is a Lesher antennae, which I've seen used to great skill to identify whether two oranges, one would be organic or one would be farmed, and therefore exposed to perhaps modern industrial farming techniques, which some people choose not to have. So a little $100 device and you can work out what's good to eat. And a similar technology to the technology that Linda introduced me as developing the biofield viewer is the BioWell. And the BioWell is also a technology that we use in our research over the last 30 years to investigate the impact of events in spaces. So, for example, I've done studies with this device in temples in India when there's going to be a festival, and we've set this up a week before and during and after the event to measure the impact of that group consciousness. It really is fascinating what we can do with these types of sensitive devices. And then another little thing which I like to share, I've got one here actually. It's called the 5-in-1, and as you can see from my image, you can put it into a glass of water to test it, or even a fruit or a vegetable. You just stab it in a banana, and it's got all kinds of settings. And maybe this is something for the stocking, I'm not sure, but quite a useful tool for us to navigate the modern environment, in a gentle and tiptoe way as possible. That's certainly my intention. And as I alluded to earlier, I think our subject, the biofield, the human atmosphere, its interactions with the environment have been the missing link. And certainly, I look forward to sharing what I know and insights that our research teams have had widely, so that other people can have a look at it. But I feel that the way that Stuart engaged you earlier, a sort of dance through the endocrine system up to the glands and the chakras, how this interaction of self and person and identity actually occurs, is something that really is an important part of sort of teeing ourselves up to accept that Kundalini invitation. So that's what I plan to do in the last 10 minutes or so of my presentation, is speak to that subject from the insights that we've had from studying and researching the human biofield. So what we're going to do is we're going to build up our reality from the 0 point. We're going to emerge like a child from the womb, taking its first breath and seeing for the first time the mother, the brother, the other. We're going on this journey right now. We're emerging out of the 0 point. And our first dimension, what we understand as first dimension, is a concept. And it's only when we see the mother, the brother, and the other that we emerge into the second dimension, which is still, as this image shows, a pencil on a piece of paper. And don't worry if I haven't got you. I'm happy to have lost you. But you can see from this central point that my consciousness becomes aware of the mother, the other, the brother, from the very first breath. And we're starting, as we emerge as a child, to populate our dimensionality. And as I go back to my first slide, the first dimension obviously relates to the earth, grounding, flight, fight, and freeze. It relates to the unconscious. It relates to the potential world. And a couple of images that I have here relating to other research, the Earthing Institute with thermal imaging, showing how important it is to be grounded. These are obviously connections with that base chakra, the ground chakra, the one dimension. And here, for the first time, our biofield view images showing what happens when someone isn't grounded, how they have these sort of red socks of congestion in their energy field. And they're not interacting, they're not letting off the steam and harmonizing with the environment. So that's a precursor to any disease, is the pattern you're seeing right now. So anyhow, the emergence of the child, identifying its mother, and then I'm going to play a little video here. This is the relationship that we're speaking to, the navel, where the umbilical cord is. And whenever we see people in a clinical environment, that region, the navel region, always relates to relationships. So if the legs and the base chakra relate to grounding and earthing issues, the navel chakra, the 2D lens, relates to relationships and the family. And 3D, obviously we know 3D is space. So hang on a second, I'm talking about a creature, a living being, now actively, consciously aware in 3 chakras, the base chakra, the second chakra, the svadhisthana, the solar plexus, and that population, that experience allows them to navigate in space. The elements associated with the third dimension is fire, obviously space, the solar plexus, this is the center for willpower, self-awareness, and the material world, obviously space. But space is nothing without time, because we're frozen in space. Time allows us to experience that expression of reality in space, and it's a very, very important chakra. And although I still may have lost you, don't worry. What I'm speaking to comes together when we see the whole picture of our experience in this time and space experience. And it's important for us because it connects us with our environment. We're not just a product of our environment. The choices we make, the environment that we choose, reflect in our well-being on a daily basis. And this image of a couple of bridges speak to a higher understanding of our relationship with nature. Sure, we have to have roads, but if we're not conscious about the wildlife crossing those roads, we're just going to see so much roadkill that eventually there isn't any left. Same like the bugs. We all used to have bugs die on our windscreen. Now that doesn't really happen anymore. You know, we have to be aware. We have to connect our beings with our environment. So the fourth chakra I'm suggesting is a direct lens, a direct portal to the fourth dimension that we know in modern scientific parley as time. So the lower three chakras allow us to navigate space. They're like gyroscopic jets that fire prana, plasma, like a space station does to keep still in time and space. In the same way, we're standing on a ball that's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, charging towards the constellation of Hercules with our solar system at God knows what speed, and we feel still because our lower three chakras, through the evolution of them, have allowed us and given us this stillness. Now, what I'm saying is that the heart chakra is the heart, is the clock, the biological clock, and the heart chakra tunes us in like a wave rider with the wave that is time. So the lower three chakras equip us to be here in this boy bag, this girl bag in space. And this connection with our heart chakra allows us to ride the wave of time. Some of us are on the board, smiling, riding this beautiful bore down the river of our own consciousness. Some of us are floundering, dragging anchors in the past, or sending tentacles into the future, and at all times not being present. So Kundalini becomes a conscious experience whereby we are fully and deeply involved in these layers of process, like space and time. And what I suggest is that when you look at an individual from a now new perspective, we're not just the body. We're also this amazing spinning toroid of energetic activity, very much like the Earth's atmosphere. We have poles, but that weather can be read to give us insights into the individual's well-being. And from my experience, and why I choose to speak to the subject of the environment, it's that relationship with the environment allows us to optimize this spinning toroid with a tornado alley of chakras constantly working to keep our spinning top spinning, because once it starts wobbling like the little wooden top and you fall over, that's it, game over. So when you have this ability, and it is an ability because you're claiming presence, you're claiming total awareness now. When you have this ability, you're riding this surfboard on the wave of time with a fully synchronized lower system, you then have the ability to access what I call the sports gearbox, but it's actually known as extrasensory perception. And it relates to me not just speaking, but actually speaking in terms of divine communion. And this is a process of me being so here that you feel it, and our words of the vibrations mean something, even down the microphone and the camera, for you to connect and feel the pull that I'm now making into this extrasensory toolbox, so that we can now understand there's a triage. And I'll tell you where this comes from. I studied for many years distant healing, where healers are thousands of miles away. I'm in a lab with 10 completely anonymous individuals And the healer 6,000 miles away is diagnosing them without any tools or equipment, just their insight, their ability to remote view. These are parapsychological tools that have been well understood and well investigated. So my suggestion is that there is a triage that occurs, which occurs, and this is the important bit, beyond space and time. This is Harry Pottersville here. This is when we're now able to access and work beyond space and time. And obviously, what's the source of power for this? Am I going to use up all the chi in my kidneys in an hour and be sucking the living daylights out of everyone else? Or am I going to be connected with source? And that's obviously the seventh dimension. I'm going to have to just dash ahead of these pictures. That's the seventh dimension. And it's like the bumper car in the fairground. Are you humble enough to accept that there's an aperture on the crown chakra which can allow source to flow in and fill up your divine field? These dowsing rods are called divining rods, so we can measure each other's divinity. And the amount of light that fills somebody up is a reflection on this seventh chakra opening. And that relates to whether you're present, speaking from divinity, with divine intention, then you get the jewels, then you get the crown. And it's all about humility. Humility opens the crown chakra, and pride closes it. This is why I speak about, the sort of cobra people who've sort of covered all the bases, it seems, but are actually, as I said, sucking the living daylights out of everybody else because they're not prepared to accept the divinity of nature. That's what it is. And although I think I'm coming to the end of my very short presentation, I've just been thrilled to share this with you. Obviously, as Linda mentioned, we have this technology, the biofield viewer, also the soul mirror, which if you search it in a week or two, you should be able to get access on your own phone to see your own chakras live in real time. So if you want to do a healing journey, you can give yourself a baseline and at any time, day or night, see how you're getting on. It's a gift to the world for a small monthly fee, let's say. Yeah, we're totally stoked, and John Catchpole and I, who've been developing this technology, have obviously got thousands of years of ancient knowledge. From my perspective, I've spent 30 years in India honoring and respecting the treasure chest that is Vedic knowledge. But all of the traditions concur. We've just had this very strange taboo where plasma, about 100 years, was kind of, the ethers were banned, but we need them back because they make up the human being in the human body. And there's a lot of us around the world who know exactly what we're talking about. And importantly, we now have technology to show people what we're talking about. So we can take them on the journey of their congested, urban, candy floss state into a guidance, holding space for them to make the choices where they can optimize. And that's the difference between a human doing and a human being. But it's also the Kundalini journey that those of us who understand the nature of the human race. It's not a race, it's a group thing, and we've got to do that thing together.